Hey, it's Dr. J. Hey students, I'm here to do another video lecture with you on Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the World Marketplace, okay? We're going to be talking about business without borders, global opportunities, international trade, taxation, things like that, okay? Some learning objectives that we're going to cover are discussing business opportunities in the world economy, discussing key reasons for international trade, analyzing strategies for reaching global markets, describing free trade movement, and discussing key benefits and some other items outlined in the objectives. Right? So starting off with the first section is an unpresented opportunity. So in this section, it's talking about individual economies around the world that have been more independent than ever before. So different economies are doing different things to grow their ability to be constant and stable and steady in their economy, which is really great. One of the reasons for growing opportunity and growing economies is technology. So technology has surpassed all kind of different things that we're able to do now. And one thing I wanted to outline was the fact that companies like Facebook and Google go public. So, they went from being an idea that somebody had to becoming a substantiated business to now they're actually a publicly traded company, okay? And it's all because of technology that they use. So that's one of the major reasons for unprecedented opportunity. All right, going on to some of the largest economies that we have in the world right now are places like China. So China is currently boosting the world's largest based cell phone user population, okay? And that's really important because we think about cell phones, from where they've come from the last 15, 20 years to now, and a cell phone is basically a miniature computer, okay? It's like a smart computer. It does everything from call to FaceTime to record videos to edit posts to create, online presentations by using things like Prezi. If you don't know what Prezi is, it's an online type of way of doing a presentation where it's always usable and tangible to you at all times. Okay, so we talk about the gross domestic product again, and we just talked about that in Chapter 2. But the selected population for the GDP figures outline the nation and the highest populated nation to going lower in population. So if you look in your book, it shows right there China is the most highly populated. Okay, which means it adds to their need for economic stability. All right, so that's something to think about in there. Okay, next we are going to go over some key reasons for international trade. So international trade is vital to the global economic stability, and three of the reasons for international trade are access to factors of productions, reduced risk, and the inflow of innovation. Okay, so all three of these bring something else to the table when it comes to substantiating and growing the economy. So with the access of factors of production, the international trade offers a value of opportunity for individual firms to capitalize on factors of productions. Okay. And then with the reduced risk, the global trade reduces the independence on one economy, lowering the economy risk for multinational firms. And then finally, the inflow of innovation. Innovation is great. You cannot succeed in the business world without being innovative. You have to be innovative, you have to be creative, you have to stay on top of your competitors, you have to understand what the needs of your consumers are versus what you're able to actually produce, and then also remember that supply and demand in that equilibrium where it's the perfect supply and the perfect demand with the perfect product. Okay. which leads into the competitive advantage. So we talked a little bit about competitive advantage in chapter 2, but this one goes a little bit deeper into it and talks about the fact that you can't have competitive advantage without opportunity cost. Okay, and opportunity cost relates to the international trade. And the reason why the international trade is so important is because there's certain policies and procedures set up for international trade with different countries. And then there's some countries that we don't have international trade set up with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the absolute advantage is when it can produce more of a good than other nations using the same amount of resources. Okay, so if you think about it, if there's a good you want to produce here, say it's carpet, you want to produce carpet, and you want to make sure you have an absolute advantage. So if you were to produce that same type of carpet overseas and get the same quality and then ship it back, that'd be a part of the absolute advantage. But then keep in mind, there is competitive advantage, so kind of weaves back and forth in there. And you're going to get other competitors that may see your product, especially if your product is popular and a lot of people, want it and want to use it. It's sustainable. Say it's made out of, I don't know, bamboo or something like that, something that grows quickly and is very durable. Bamboo is one of those things. Then you would want to make sure that your competitive advantage would offset your amount of natural resources that you could use to create that product to still make revenue on it, okay? Still have a profit. All right, so then that leads us into comparative advantage, all right? That's kind of a leeway, meaning that they tend to turn out those goods that have a lowest opportunity cost compared to other countries. Okay, so an example of this that that I saw in the book that I want to elaborate on is the United States has a comparative advantage for film, movies, media, things like that, because a lot of movies and things that go to the big screen are produced here in the States. And now that comparative advantage is kind of getting a little bit wavered because a lot of programs are getting produced and managed in Canada. So that's another thing. So I would say even as I'm reading this text that the comparative advantage is changing. All right. Also, high performance cars. So high performance cars are at a comparative advantage if they're being produced in Europe, okay? Specifically Germany, and then also electronics. So Korea dominates the comparative advantage for electronics. If you have some type of electronics, more than likely it was made and shipped from Korea, as is China when it comes to clothing and knickknacks and things like that. If you look at something, more than likely your clothing is going to be either made in Vietnam or China, one of those two things, unless it actually says made and produced in the USA. Okay. All right. So moving on to the balance of payments. So the balance of payments is basically the influx and outflux of funds. Okay. It is a measure of total flow of money into or out of a country. All right, that's pretty straightforward. And then I wanted to touch on exchange rates because that was really important. So exchange rates, unless you've traveled abroad or been overseas, the exchange rates have a ability of changing. So I know when my parents were stationed in Germany for a couple of years, we always would look at the daily exchange rates of the currency. So, the American dollar exchange rate for, the German money, which is the Deutsche coin or things like that, it's going to be different per the exchange rate. So the exchange rate may be high for the American dollar, but it may be low for, the European or the other country's currency. So a lot of times, when we were looking at the daily exchange rates, it was a better profit to exchange your American money for the local money, because we would get more for our money exchanging it. So for instance, one day the exchange rate would be a dollar would exchange for $1.50 in European money. So it made more sense to, if you were going to go shopping or buy groceries or gas or something like that, to take your American money and exchange it and then use it as the other currency, because you're going to get more, because the exchange rate was high for that day. Okay. All right. Going on to outsourcing and importing. So outsourcing and importing are really important, but it's also mindful to remember that, like the book says, there's no right way to seize an opportunity in the global market, because it's always changing. And because it's always changing, it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. All right. Foreign outsourcing and importing. So foreign outsourcing and importing, I relate it to, I kind of think about Shark Tank. Shark Tank, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a show that entrepreneurs can go on to, and they spill their ideas and what they've been doing. And while they're doing that, the investors, the sharks, they're thinking of ways to strategize and make more money off of a product. Okay. And what they do is they take, the products, and they think, okay, well, my suppliers overseas can make the same product for, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 cents, versus in the States, it'd be 75 cents to $1. So the foreign outsourcing and importing is important to business, but it's also important to product production and productivity development. Okay. All right. Okay. Need a little break right there. Hold on, I need another one. That's better. Okay. So exporting, per your book, is the most basic level of international market development. And this is really important, because with exporting, it could be anything from, wine to, clothing to hair. In countries where there is a predominant need, and we talked about supply and demand again, it's a dominant need for a certain product, then they're going to export that more than any other product. And there's dominating products for countries where, they make the most money on their exports for, beauty products or cosmetics, hair, things of those natures. And in the same aspect, and it can vary from region to region of that particular country. So that's important to remember too. All right. The foreign direct investment. So the foreign direct investment is basically when you are supplying the investment opportunity of any particular company, organization, things like that. The cost is high, of course, but companies with a direct investment have more control over how their businesses operate in any given country. Okay, so an example of that would be if a big-time realtor place went into a different country and decided that they were going to build so many of those, then that would be a part of the foreign direct investment in that particular company, whether the company was an American-based company or not. All right. We're going to go over to joint ventures, which involve two or more companies that join forces. sharing resources, risks, profits, but not merging the companies together, which is why it's called a joint venture, because they're kind of venturing off into, the possibility of if this is going to work. All right, that's how a lot of partnerships happen. And that leads us into the next one, which is partnerships. So it's a little bit less formal, comprising of an agreement, and is normally called a strategic alliance. So it goes strategic alliance. So you have an alliance with certain companies or certain businesses, and then you venture over to partnerships, and then the partnership becomes a joint venture, and then the joint venture becomes a collaborated effort or something like that, where either they completely join together or they don't. So a good example is if you're familiar with SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Management, or the other one is, I can't think of the other one, but there's two ventures, two HR companies. And so they join together, and they are that's what it is. It's the HRCI, which is the Human Resources Corporation. Okay, well, I'll get it for you. All right, so anyway, so there's two HR huge corporations and organizations that venture together, and they do different partnerships, different training aspects, and different strategic alliance things, where if you're an HR professional, you can, get training from either organization, and it's transferable toward either a certification or something like that. But more or less, it's the ability to come together and, have collaborated thought in order to increase the idea of the mission goal, or what the business wants to do, or where they want to go, things like that. Okay? I apologize if I confused you a little bit with that. Going on to economic differences. So economic differences happen often in business, especially with international trade. But one that I thought was really interesting, that I read an article on and had done some research on, was Walmart. So Walmart is an excellent example for economic differences, because they are a large Fortune 500 company, and they go to other countries and they, build Walmarts, and they have strategic methods for going to different countries and setting up shop and things like that. But a lot of the whole thing behind economic differences is cultural differences as well. So it's important for a business to, when they decide, okay, we're going to set up shop in Japan, okay, but they need to take a serious strategic look at what the company's bringing to the table for that country, what the culture needs, what that culture is used to, and the differences that they may have to adjust within their business with that particular culture. So for an example, Walmarts in Japan sell, fresh fish every day that's local caught, or other business things, or, things that are tangible to the local market, versus the Walmarts in the States may not have those same type of items on the shelves, because of the fact that, it's a cultural difference between strategically where the actual building for the Walmart is. All right. Okay. We're going to go on to political and legal differences. So there's some political and legal differences, especially when it comes to economics. And it's important to remember that there's rules, there's policy and regulations when it comes to business, how business functions, how business works, and why it works the way it does. All right. The book mentions the World Bank. In whole, it's called the World Bank Group. Okay. The World Bank has published a recent article called Doing Business. It's a report that ranks the ease of doing business for small and medium-sized companies in 183 different countries. I thought that was really interesting. If you have time, I recommend going to the library or even online and typing in World Bank Group Doing Business Report. It's really fascinating. All right, but overall, the Doing Business Group report projects and examines the ease of doing business, of dealing with construction permits, paying taxes, and systematic ways of reducing risk for both domestic and foreign businesses. Okay. All right. The political climate. So the political climate is any country deeply influencing, whether that is a nation that is attracted to foreign business or not. Okay. It all aligns with sustainability. Sustainability and stabilization is crucial when it comes to economic and political climates. It's important to understand that it's not all way or one way or no way. There's a lot of different facets of information and aspects where the economic and the political climate have to merge together in order to find what best meets the needs for that particular business or organization. All right. Okay. So I wanted to talk about embargoes because I thought that was interesting, and there was only a little bitty section in the book. So the embargoes is basically a total, complete total ban on international trade of a certain item. Okay? Not the country, the item. All right? Or a total halt on trade with a nation, with a particular nation. But it could be one or two things. It could be an item that the nation is exporting, or the entire nation. So as an example, I put some notes in the book and I wrote down Cuba, because even though we are now allowed to travel to Cuba and go over there, the embargo has not been lifted. But you never know. By the time this video posts, it may be lifted. So don't quote me on that. But as of right now, I just checked. It is not lifted. And it's important to understand that there are layers to policies and items like this, which goes back to the last thing I was talking about, which is the economic and political aspects of business and how this works. So just because we're able to travel there doesn't mean that the embargo for items from Cuba has been lifted. Okay. All right. So now I wanted to go over, because there's a section in your book called the World Bank. I'm going to say again, it's called the World Bank Group. Okay. Because I looked it up. Just wanted to make sure, because it's an international collaborative effort. And they do a number of things which I found interesting, was not outlined in the book. So I just wanted to give you some extra information on the World Bank pertaining to what they actually do. So the World Bank is made up of 5 institutions, and it's called one group. The 5 institutions, or even 5 organizations of the World Bank, are the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which leads to the governments of middle income and creditworthy low income countries. The International Development Association, which provides interest-free loans called credits and grants to governments of the poorest countries. The International Finance Corporation, which is the largest global development institution focused exclusively on private sector. The Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, which promotes direct investments into developing countries to support economic growth, reduce poverty, and improve people's lives. And then finally, the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, which provides international facilities for reconciliation on arbitration of investment disputes. Okay, so that's what the World Bank's about. All right, and then finally, the European Union, also called the EU. The European Union functions on what's called a common market. And the common market is something that, is sustaining for balancing out common tariffs, which are also taxes on trade, establishing a base tax. So it's a super fair and equal balanced way of their version of the world's common market practices. Okay. All right. So that was chapter 3. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email me, call me, or come by my office. All right. I'm Dr. J, and I am here for your success. All right, guys.